So a lot of dating advice channels for women focus on a pretty simple strategy. If you make a guy wait for sex, he's going to commit. And a lot of the strategies and advice on those channels are pretty much centered around this foundational idea to not give in to the fuckboy, the guy who gives all these promises, sleeps with you, and then just ends up wanting sex or changes his mind. Maybe he genuinely wanted a relationship, but he changed his mind after sex. And so the strategy is okay, but it's kind of just the typical strategy of every woman. Just at some point, the woman fails to uphold that discipline and lets the guy fuck her, and then the spiral of disaster happens, and then the woman's crying, oh, why doesn't he like me? Why doesn't he love me? Why won't he commit to me? Blah, 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 blah. If this advice was sufficient in and of itself, I think most women would have figured it out by now, and women wouldn't have a lot of trouble with dating. But they do. So clearly there is a very big need and demand for solutions that work. Unfortunately for you, the solution is not going to be simple. Just like when I'm teaching men, so I'm a dating coach for men, and I myself have been a player, fuckboy, but also boyfriend, and I am now a husband. Okay, so me being a man is not sufficient to give you advice, right? But me being a dating coach and having learned how women think and how men think, because I've gone into my own mind and also the minds of all the guys that I've taught and currently am teaching because I'm an active coach for men, that's what makes me an authority for this. And there is a huge need for nuanced, detailed, contextual advice that is probably going to be a bit raw, and my personality is going to add a lot to that. So I'll tell you up front, I'm going to curse a lot. I'm going to use adult words, okay? And I'm assuming you're all adults. And I can be quite harsh and direct. Not unnecessarily so. I think there's actually a pedagogical reason, fancy word for there's a teaching reason behind it, right? I'll use a lot of fancy words too. I have a philosophy degree, so I'm quite pretentious. But I think a lot of my words not only can be harsh, but accurate. But if that's not your style, I'm definitely not the coach for you. There's plenty of guys out there who will talk to you more soft. But here's the thing. The guys out there are going to fuck you and fuck you over a lot harder than me saying a couple adult words and being a little bit harsh. So if your feelings are going to get hurt from some not so nice words, let me straighten this camera, you're going to have a lot worse time with the guys who are going to literally fuck you and then fuck you over because you don't know how to navigate men, okay? So this is going to be my inaugural first video, but it's going to essentially give my thesis on how women should navigate dating men. And so I'm going to go over the reason why this idea of making men wait for sex is inherently flawed. It has some value, it has some merit, otherwise women wouldn't have been doing it all throughout history, but it is incomplete, and we need to fix the plot holes with some, like I said, nuance and detail, and then I'll give you kind of my like grand unified theory of attraction, and it works for men. So I'm just going to take what has worked for men and switch it to women. But the kind of switch, the internal mechanism is the same, right? But the switch is going to be, the women are going to apply these principles from the role of the one being pursued, okay? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be pursued. You can make certain efforts to increase men's likelihood of approaching you and making moves with you, but you are always going to be playing, dancing from the pursued role or the follower role. Again, if that's not your thing, I am not the coach for you, okay? That is not going to change. Men are going to be the pursuers, you're going to be the pursued. That's how it's going to be, and that's how it really should be, and it's the best way and the most natural way. So, why is making men wait for sex? I have some notes over here, so if you see me, I just talk with bullet points. I can mostly freeball this as I do with my men's dating videos. And if you're curious about how I teach, in full transparency, I teach on a channel called Girls Chase, but then I also have my own solo channel, so I work with someone else for that. And then I have my own solo channel, Hector Castillo, and this is Hector Castillo for Women. So if you want to go see my advice and, you know, either hate me or love me, go check out those channels. But I just use bullet points and then I freeball because I know what I'm talking about. This just keeps me from digressing, but I am going to digress a lot. But you're women, so you're used to that. It's something that I've always been a digressional thinker, and have I have a lot of femininity in my personality. So it's actually going to work quite well with talking to women. Insane amounts of details, digressions that end up kind of looping back. Sometimes I try to complete the circle. But yeah, okay, so already digressing. But it's a transparency digression, so you can get to know me. So there's two things that are wrong with the idea of making men wait for sex. Okay, so there's two bad results. There can be the good result, right? But the strategy in and of itself is not sufficient. It works sometimes, but it works for reasons that you don't understand. Okay, so the two bad results for making men wait for sex are going to be either you're not that into him because he's not that fucking cool, he's not that hot, he's not that sexy, and for those reasons and more, that's why he waited so long. The other result is that even if you make the guy wait for sex, he's still going to fuck you and then fuck you over. He's just very patient or very desperate, so he's willing to wait. It's not patience through choice, it's patience through necessity. So the first one is actually the one that you're not going to be so familiar with. The second one you're probably familiar with. You make a guy wait for sex, but then he still ends up being a fuckboy anyways, all right? But the first one is the interesting one, so we'll start with that. This is where you do the whole strategy to make him wait to get commitment because you think that time and investment equals commitment, but that's not necessarily true. That is an aspect of commitment. It's called compliance stacking. It's actually a strategy, a technique that men have when dating women. If you get her to do one thing for you, then she's more likely to do another thing for you, right? So if I ask a friend, like, hey, buddy, can you lend me $5, right? And then I get $5, and then you do have to pay him back because if you don't pay him back and you just keep asking, they're eventually going to catch on. But let's say you pay him back. Well, now he trusts you, right? So he's going to pay you $10 or borrow you $10 if you ask for $10. He's going to lend you $15, $20. And your increasing stacking of compliance of his trust and investment in you is going to have him want or be more open to giving you more in the future, right? Now, if he can't give you the money, of course, he's not going to give you the money, but he's much more likely because he's already seen the results of trusting you, right? The same works with so many other aspects of life. You know, you get into a new hobby and you start buying stuff, and then you're going to buy more of it, especially if you start seeing good results from it, like yoga. You start buying all the yoga balls and the yoga things and the blocks and the new outfit, and then you just like totally jump into this new hobby, and you're much more likely to spend more until, of course, you hit a wall. But it isn't the actual investment itself. There has to be more to it. Mostly, like, you need to know why you're investing so much, and there has to be results coming to continuously feed the desire for more. And this principle can be used maliciously, right, by psychopaths and narcissists, but it can also be used ethically. Marketing can, be malicious and get you to buy things that are bad for you and they suck and you don't need them, or it could be used properly and actually get you to buy things that you normally wouldn't, but because the marketer knows how to tweak your psychology. But at the end of the day, you have choice, okay? So let's not pretend anyone's a fucking Jedi, right? At the end of the day, if you want to do something, you're going to do it, and you're not going to do something you don't want. So we have to take responsibility for our choices as well, right? But see, I'm already digressing. But it was necessary. So the first bad result of this strategy of making a guy wait for sex is that you're not going to fucking like this guy, okay? And I've always understood this, but it became very real with a client that I had. It was a female client, actually. So I have had 2 technical female clients. But I've given advice to a lot of girls. And I've been studying the psychology of dating between sexes for, let's see, I kind of started like really getting into it once I hit college, just like how to talk to people and how to get girls. But then I've been a coach for 7.5 years, getting paid for it, but I've been coaching for about 9 years. So I've been doing this for a long fucking time, okay? And I had this female client who was like, I need to know what to do with this guy who I like, right? But it wasn't the guy who she likes right now, who she's having trouble with, that was the interesting part. It was the finishing of the story. But the real interesting part that is about, not liking a guy who you make wait for sex is actually her 7-year relationship and engagement that preceded the relationship she's now having trouble with. So we're going to have story time, okay? And this is going to illustrate a lot of the ideas that I'm going to give to you, and then I'll go over some of the points. So she was a very beautiful girl. Like, for me, fucking dime, like 10 out of 10. And she was a pharmacologist, so, PharmD, basically a medical degree, right? Very educated girl, making good money, beautiful, sexy, hot. Like, she had everything going for her, okay? And when she came to me, she was struggling with this guy who she had just started seeing after recently breaking her 7-year relationship and engagement with her ex-boyfriend or ex-fiance. And so I needed to get the full context. I said, well, you need to tell me about that. Like, why did that fail, so I can understand her psychology? So she started dating this guy, and they got engaged, I think, 4 years into the relationship, something like that, 3 or 4 years. And then they were together for a total of 7, and then she ended it because she didn't like him. She looked at the prospect of marrying him and was like, no, I'm not going to be happy. And so she broke it off, and then she was single, and then she met this guy. So here's just a fun trivia question that's going to directly tie into this video. How long do you think that she made him wait for sex? Just like make a fucking gander, right? I mean, you could probably guess from the drama of the story, that it's probably a long time. But I'm curious how long. So they've been together 7 years, and they were engaged for about 3 or 4. How long do you think this chick made the dude wait for sex? So we're going to look real close at this strategy of making a guy wait for sex and why maybe it doesn't work so well. She made him wait 3 fucking years. Okay, this dude is next level desperate. I do not consider that discipline. And it wasn't for religious reasons, okay? If you're religious and you're waiting for sex, I mean no disrespect at all to you, okay? I actually have a client who is a born-again Christian and, so he's not having sex with his girlfriend, and I give him advice, right? So you still have all these principles of attraction working even without sex, and I have full respect for people who religiously, choose not to have sex. But this was not a religious thing. This was the dude just... I mean, she's really hot, so I could see him waiting a little bit. But 3 years that's some next level stuff, right? So you would think, you go girl, like, oh yeah, you got commitment out of him, slay girl, blah, blah, blah. Made him wait 3 years for sex. And then they were together for another 4 years and got engaged. And then she broke it off with him. So there was obviously some problems, right? He wasn't the one who broke it. She was. So what was wrong? Was the sex not great? Well, clearly fucking not. If he was fucking that pussy really good and making her come and cream and just be thirsty for him, clearly, right? Big adult words, here we go. X-rated shit, right? Clearly, if they were having a good time, she would not be ending it with him, right? Clearly, she wasn't truly in love with him, right? Because they are pretty separate, but lust is a lot stronger than you think it is, and it actually incorporates a lot of what you think love is, but that's for a whole nother video. I got tons of shit to teach you girls. So the lust wasn't there, and the love wasn't there. I guess the trust was there. I mean, he earned her trust over those years of fucking waiting, and that's what my system, my philosophy is: love, lust, trust, right? And if you have those 3 things to a certain degree, right, you can move through the stages of the courtship with someone, to the kissing, or, to actually go on a date, then to kiss, then to, fool around, then to have sex, and then to continue to have sex, and then maybe to become a thing together, and then maybe move in together and get married and have kids and blah, 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 right? You're always going to be incorporating these principles to varying degrees depending on people's standards and desires. Something was wrong, right? And I would venture to say that the fact that her strategy was the tried and true kind of inbred in your female psychology and biology of make the guy wait for sex, that means he's committed, it didn't fucking work. Because just getting the commitment is not enough. You have to get a guy who's actually worth committing to in the first place. And unfortunately, this is where things get complicated, girls, and there are no easy answers. I'm sorry, and we're about to, get a real fucking, the red pill for women, right? A guy, this is going to be hard, okay? I might lose some of you here. I'm prepared, right? I'm prepared for the dislikes and the comments. I've dealt with it so much, I don't give a shit, right? But I'm curious what some are going to say. A man who is, for non-religious reasons, a man who is willing to wait 3 years to have sex is a pussy. And that is not a guy that you are clearly fucking attracted to. Because there's no goddamn fucking way that you would be able to resist a dude who you were truly, your pussy is just like purring for him. There's no way you could put up with 3 years of patience. No way. You would fold so fucking quicker than that. So clearly she wasn't really into this guy. She was just getting commitment because she could, get away with it. Because she had the looks and the hots and clearly the charm. She was a sweet chick, right? But she didn't like him. So the first bad result that most of you don't even realize, that making a guy wait for sex, is that you might get what you wish for. And that's not a good thing, right? So you want this guy to commit to you, and you get him to commit to you, and then you're like, oh, wait, this is the whole problem with nice guys, It's like, oh, yeah, you're nice, but it's not that he's nice. There's nothing wrong with being nice, except for, the guys who, pretend to be nice, but really they're just, desperate for sex, which this guy actually was, right? So that's actually part of the criticism of guys who wait for sex. He's just doing it because he's fucking desperate, because trust me, if this guy wasn't this desperate, he wouldn't wait that long. He would have been like, girl, get on this dick or get the fuck out. Because at some point, you two are not putting equal investment. You are not holding up your end of the bargain. I'm sorry, sweetie, but no pussy is worth waiting that long for. I don't care, right? There's girls just as hot as you and just as beautiful as you who will put out. Sorry, again, but that's just the truth. And any man worth his, weight in gold is not going to be waiting that long, right? So you're going to get what you wish for. You're going to get a guy who's going to wait. But any guy who's going to wait is really not fucking worth it. He's not a, whatever, you fucking Chad alpha, whatever the fucking term you want to use, right? Guy that you like. So, that strategy doesn't end up working. And what's funny is, here's the second part of the story. And so now she's talking to me, and she tells me about the new guy, right? And it's some, Puerto Rican dude. He looks cleaned up, but he's got a little bit of that cholo, little bit, Latin gangster kind of vibe. I mean, he dressed well. He looked like he was a bit, a little bit higher class. I'm not saying he was. He looked good, right? But he had that kind of thuggish, more macho, masculine persona. You could see it instantly with his pictures. And then with the way that he was texting her and talking to her. And she fucking liked it, right? And they had their first date at some club. She went to go meet him with his friends. So she met his friends the first time she went on a date, which is great, She's like, oh wow, this guy. But I'm just thinking, I'm like, hey, good game, dude. But you're getting all these signals, right? Which I find a little bit manipulative. I wouldn't be introducing a girl to my friends unless I thought something was a little bit more serious. I mean, she's hot enough. I would personally she's girlfriend quality in terms of looks and hot. But I would be hesitant to start sending the signals of her being a potential girlfriend, because you're a 10 in my book, and you're educated and you have all these things that I value. My wife has a pharmacology degree too, which is kind of funny. So highly educated, beautiful, has all the things I would want. I would still be hesitant, right, to be sending out those signals, because I'm like, just because you're good on paper and good, to my eyes, doesn't mean we're going to actually make a good couple. Okay, that's not enough to necessarily put you in the running for wifey. But I'm realizing okay, good game, but maybe he's playing a little bit, right? He might know what he's doing. But hey, maybe he genuinely did want her to meet his friends because he was thinking he likes her. Who knows, right? But it starts to get complicated. So she goes to meet him and meets his friends and, has a great time. And she's like, oh, I'm just really into him. I'm really attracted to him. And they end up kissing on the first date, okay? And then when the date's finished, they go back to either his car or her car. I think she drives him back to her car or whatever. And while they're in the car, they're making out more. And he ends up fingering her on the first fucking date. And then he does try to get her home. He tries 3 times, she said. And she admitted and confessed. She's like, it was hard to say no. I wanted to say yes, but I was disciplined. I was a little bit tipsy, but I was disciplined, and I said no, right? But she was still very interested in him. Like, he was clearly making moves for sex, but she didn't, like, slot him into that, like, oh, you're a fuckboy box. It was just like, okay, you're dangerous, right? There's different boxes you girls put guys in, and I know. So he had that Latin fever, and he's trying to get up in her pants already, but like not too much, right? He played that nice little balance. But what I found funny was like this her fucking ex-fiance who I think he took her virginity. So I could understand waiting a little bit longer if a girl's a virgin, but again, 3 years, goddamn. He waited 3 years to have sex. Mr. fucking Rico Suave got his finger in her pussy in the first fucking couple hours. So, I want you to tell me, is that just, oh yeah, she was just feeling it? Yeah, but what does that fucking mean? That means that she was feeling this for homeboy, her ex-fiance, right? And she was feeling this, I'm going above the camera, for Mr. Rico Suave. So clearly she was swimming in a different league, a different ocean of men who she's attracted to. Okay, now there can be a lot of other variables going in, like she's already had sex, so now she's more comfortable with her sexuality. I understand there's a lot more variables than just the speed in which they hooked up, and there's a lot of things causing that, but the time difference cannot be ignored. There is clearly some very strong reasons why she was down to clown a little bit more with this dude on the first date in a couple hours, and homeboy had to wait 3 years, okay? And the large message that I'm trying to send is that she likes this guy a lot more, and this guy not so much. And by playing this strategy of making a guy wait for sex, you got the wrong fish on the hook. You used the wrong bait. Now, I'm not saying you don't use bait. I'm not saying you don't lure a little bit and get guys to put a little bit of commitment in. But making a guy wait is not the one-track, one-size-fits-all strategy. You know how girls could, girls will go on like my dating advice channels and be like, it doesn't work on all women, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, and you got to get to know blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, I understand that. And if you actually watch my video, you'd see there's tons of context and nuance. But some girls, just like guys, are fucking stupid, and they just like hear what they want to hear, and it goes in one ear and out the other. But to a certain extent, there is a overarching process and strategy that tends to work with a lot of women, and there tends to be a large consistency in what women are attracted to. There might be some contextual things and nuance depending on her personality, what she likes and what she has history of, or what she wants to try new. But there's a process, and there's some universal attractors that women like, and for the most part, the guys' goal is to get sex as soon as possible, and the girl's goal is to delay sex as much as possible, but it is not that simple. Okay, that's just a large overview. So, the first bad result of making men wait for sex is that, like I said, you're going to get what you wish for, and that's a guy that doesn't really make your pussy purr that much, because if you did, you would not be able to resist. Right? She was barely able to resist on the first date. The second bad result is the one that you probably are familiar with if you were watching this channel, because if you were in a happy, committed relationship, you wouldn't be watching homeboy with a resting Grinch face. I think it's a pretty clever t-shirt. Resting Grinch face shirt sitting in his room with the very mediocre film equipment, because it really doesn't matter that much, right? It's the advice. Giving you advice, okay? Also, I know I look young, but I'm 32. So if any girls want to be like, oh, he's too young to give me advice. Nah, honey, I probably got a lot more experience than most guys you've met fucking combined. And definitely more experience than you. So, but I have a baby face, so, and I don't really grow facial hair that much. Yeah, authority things, right? It's important. People don't care about that shit, so you have to actually make it clear. But yeah, digression. Where was I? Oh yeah, the one that you're used to and why you're probably watching this video is you probably did hook up with the dude, and maybe you even made him wait, and you still got fucked over anyways. Sucks to suck, right? Clearly, it's not a winning strategy. Just making him wait doesn't guarantee his investment, because like with the other dude, I mean, you get what you wish for, but let's go with the other guys. Maybe it is a guy you really like and you make him wait. Maybe he's just really fucking patient. You know, I've met girls who I was sleeping with and we were casually sleeping together, and then she would give me the, hey, I really like hooking up with you, blah, 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 but I'm looking for something more serious, so I'm going to go off and do that. I'm like, okay, wish you the best, you know, come back when you want some dick, right? And, you know, I enjoy talking to girls and spending time with them, too. It's not just sex, right? But that is the main selling point. And I would eventually hear back from some of them. And, you know, they'd come over and we'd do it. Or we'd just talk, because they would get advice from me because they knew what I did for a living, because I'm very open. And I would hear the same old story. You know, you were, like, cool and upfront about it, and I liked it, and the sex is great. And then I went to go find a boyfriend, and then I found guys who played the role very well and put on a good act, and we waited X amount of time, you know, weeks, months, and he was, like, so into me, and, you know, telling me I'm special, and we're going to get together, and blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've heard the same old thing. And then we had sex, and he started to act strange and different, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, honey, yeah, that's because you are lacking education. You need to know that some men are just fucking liars, okay? Some men are just deceivers, and that's manipulation, right? Being a good marketer and a seducer, it's not manipulation. I mean, I'm just showing the best parts of myself and accentuating my personality, and maybe showing a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. But those are all things that are within me. I'm not lying or deceiving. But some men just outright fucking lie, or give very obvious or explicit expectations and promises and then don't live up to them. That is manipulation, right? And those men are going to get the karma from that deception and manipulation. But that's not really under your control. What is under your control is your education and your wisdom and your judge of character. So we clearly need to work on that. And this is where my advice is going to be very hard to swallow compared to a lot of other dating coaches for women. You're also going to have to level up a little bit, honey. You're going to need to just get good. It's the same kind of advice that I give men, right? If you're not getting the kind of women that you want, you got to get better. You got to get more charming. You got to get more funny. You got to get more hot. You got to get more sexy. And that's not just physical. There are physical elements, especially for men. Men are more visual than women, right? Not 100%. You know, a girl who with charm and good game, and, you know, she can kind of, you know, fashion and makeup can go a long way, and fitness can really fucking go a long way. You can get a guy who may be above your pay grade, right? But because you got it all, you know, you can win out over a girl who maybe has had hit a little bit more of the genetic lottery jackpot, but you're just better, right? So you don't need to be confined by what you were born with, just like what I tell men. It is a little bit more heavily of a factor for attracting men, because men are more visual, but it is not a deal breaker. But you're going to have to put in some work. And some of it's going to be physical, and a lot of it's going to be mental. So to move on, to kind of conclude, why is this not a winning strategy? Well, so I kind of started to hint to what we're going to get into after. Like, okay, what do I actually do, right? But we need to finish understanding why making a guy wait is not enough. It's not the waiting, okay? It's not the waiting that makes a guy commit. It's a combination of, let's just say two things for now. Okay, it's a combination of willingness to commit, right? And we're not going to be like, oh yeah, he just has commitment issues. I mean, that is a factor, obviously. But he has a willingness to commit because he has a personality that has the ability to commit. Because usually when you see guys who don't commit, they tend to not commit to a lot of other things in their life. Like a lot of guys who, for instance, are really good with girls, like picking up girls, they actually have a pretty shitty life overall, right? Most guys who are like really, really good at pickup, they tend to live very irresponsible, erratic lives. And then guys who maybe are not so good at getting girls, they tend to be a little bit more stable and they make better boyfriends. But the problem is they don't make girls' pussies wet as much as the guy who is actually sexy and charming, right? So every guy is like, this guy has this that this guy's missing, but then he doesn't have this that this guy has, but he's missing the thing this guy has, right? So what you're kind of looking for in a man, ideally, is the mix of both. But that's like the 1% or even less than that, right? But if you want to get that 1%, then you're going to have to also be close to that 1%, right? But that's the next part. So making a guy wait for sex is it's a B tier strategy, right? I probably shouldn't use gamer terms with girls. You're like, what the fuck is tier? I mean, you probably know what it means, B tier strategy versus an S tier strategy. But let me think of like something that makes sense, right? It's just lower level strategy. Okay, I'll come up with more charming colloquialisms for the girls. But it's just a low-level strategy. It's not that fucking good, okay? You're getting a guy to chase a long time to prove his commitment, right? That's the simple explanation of what it is. But it's his willingness to commit in and of itself that you're actually looking for. This is just the litmus test, right? It's like the pregnancy test for it. We're getting real weird, right? So you're getting him to take this test to see if he tests positive, right, for commitment. But there's other ways to do it. Mostly just being a good fucking judge of character, which we're going to get to. But the second part that you're going to need is this is where it gets a little bit rough. You have to be worth committing to. He has to fucking want to commit to you, okay? Want to. Now, how do you tell the difference between a guy who wants to commit to you and wants to smash? That's, that's the $1 million fucking question. If I could write that out in an equation and give it to you, I could sell it for a fucking $1 million, and some girls would be taking out mortgages to pay for it, right? And paying me over the next 30 years because it would solve a lot of their fucking problems. Not saying love and, relationships are the only things in life, but it tends to be the most powerful, right? So you need to find a guy who has a commitment personality, right? And that, well, I guess there's a third thing, that a guy who you actually want too, right? You have to not be desperate. So I guess it's three spokes. Or fucking my charisma is failing me. My vernacular, my lexicon is lacking. You need to find a guy who is worth it. You have to be worth it, okay? And then he actually has to be willing to commit and have that kind of personality, because he could want, this is where it gets complicated, he actually could want to commit to you, but because he's just fucking erratic and he's irresponsible, he's going to have trouble, right? But that's where it gets dangerous for you girls, because that's like, oh my God, he's right there. I know you probably, in that case, maybe have a good judge of character. You know he really likes you, but like, oh, he's just right there. And that's the most dangerous of all relationships, where it's almost there. The carrot is always perpetually in fucking inches of you, and you can't get it. That's the more dangerous one. The more extreme cases, the guy who's super thirsty for you, or the guy who's clearly not a thing for you. Those are easy to tell. It's the ones that are towards the middle of the spectrum that are really difficult. But yeah, so just making him wait for sex is a single-minded strategy for a multi-layered outcome, that relies on a lot more variables. We just talked about 3, but you could split those into like a bunch of fucking things, right? Because psychology is complicated. So I've dedicated my life to pretty much figuring this out and then discovering the secrets of the universe. That's the only thing that's really interested in me, is sex and romance and all of the psychology involved with it, and then like the answers to everything. I found this one with Buddhism. That's just easy peasy, right? This one, there weren't any manuals out there, right? Even the guys giving advice, most of them were half-baked, except for the guy who became my mentor. He had most of it figured out. And then I, pretty much me and him have completed the tomes. We could pretty much teach you anything. So, anyways, digression over. Single-minded strategy, not going to work for something that is multi-layered. So, what is the fucking solution, Hector, Mr. Guy that has his first video on the channel? How do you actually get a guy to commit? Well, it's going to be complicated, and I'm going to have to make a whole channel about it, right? And if it's successful enough, then I'll dedicate a lot of time to it. If it's not, well, I'll try to get videos out occasionally just for the compassionate element of my heart, that I just want to help girls, even if it doesn't end up helping me that much financially, because I do okay enough with my day job, teaching men, right? But, I want to help you girls too. So, it's kind of like 5 steps, right? Just broad overview. And I just kind of went over them, right? So first, you have to be worthy of commitment, okay? Not just lust, but commitment, right? And some girls focus a lot on the commitment. They make themselves into the person who is worth committing. They're very trustworthy. They're very kind. They're very compassionate. They're caretakers, because men like that. If you think the boss bitch, all that shit, if you think that's going to be, a guy's going to want to commit to that, all right, honey. I probably already lost most of the girls watching who are from that perspective, right? Some guys do want hyper-ambitious women, but it's very rare. Yeah, it's just not even worth getting it. That's totally another video, right? I could make like 100 videos from everything that I've talked about in this video. Thousands, right? But you have to be worthy of commitment. So it has to be attraction, lust, right? So love, lust, trust. This is what all of these things are going to be based on. You have to make him lust after you, okay? You also have to make him love you, right? You have to have a personality that he has to enjoy talking to you, okay? And that doesn't mean being a smart ass. It can involve being smart. It can involve being creative, but not pretentiously creative. It can involve having self-respect and boundaries and being able to enforce them. But there's a fine line between that and being a fucking cunt, okay? Just like there's a fine line between a guy who enforces his boundaries, right, and being a fucking prick asshole douche, right? And we have to learn in what contexts which is which. With one person in one context, you can do this, and that was right. In another context, you're being a prick, okay? So we're going to have to make a guy lust after you, but also love you and trust you, right? Because guys also fear the cheating slut whore just as much as you fear the cheating slut fuckboy, okay? So you're going to need to get all 3 aspects. You have to be worthy of his trust, worthy of his love, and worthy of his lust. Or the other way around. I like it the other way around. Love, lust, trust. Because the 2 rhyme at the end. I'm clever. You need to test him for his potential in 2 aspects. His value, do you even fucking like him? Hearkening back to the girl who had that guy for 7 years, but she didn't really like him. Or she wouldn't have broke up with him. I mean, she liked him enough to stay with him for 7 years, but who knows? Maybe it was just comfortable, right? She was maybe going through medical school, and it was really... Right? I'm really good with psychology, right? So, sorry, I'm going to jerk myself a lot off in videos. I can be sometimes quite self-complimentary. But hey, you should take a page from my book in that respect and start complimenting yourself, right? I'm not just hardcore going to jump down your throat. I'm also going to be very positive and motivating, but sometimes in a very rough way, right? But look at that. See? Why was she with this guy for 7 years if she didn't like him? There was something she was attracted to, but clearly it wasn't his dick, right? What was it? What was it? What was it? Well, she was going through medical school, right? PharmD, pharmacology, right? You go through medical school, just a different program. So, 4 years undergrad, and then how many fucking years in medical school, and then, residency and shit like that. Long fucking time. Well, maybe she was really comfortable with this guy, and it provided some level of stability and happiness in a super chaotic, difficult line of study and work. That's one aspect, right? So he had something, right? But not the full package. So you have to be able to see clearly if he's what you want or not, or are you just being desperate? And this is not a channel teaching desperation, okay? There's a lot of guys out there who are going to teach you the basic strategies to get a guy hooked, and some of it might actually work, right? Just like a lot of dating advice for men channels out there kind of work, but they are mid-tier, all right? They are not the top of the line, but I am top of the line, okay? So, but you don't know that yet. I have to earn that trust from you, right? By giving you advice that actually fucking works. But you have to put it into practice. It can't just sound good, because I know it sounds good, but you need to actually put it into practice. So you have to be able to tell if he's the value that you want. And then you also have to be willing to commit and have a personality that can commit in whatever aspect that means, which we'll kind of get to in a second, right? So you have to be testing him for these things to truly see if he is who he presents himself to be. And if he isn't, are the things that he's not showing bad, or are they good? Maybe he's even better than you think, right? He's just maybe a little bit more shy, or maybe he's just kind of holding back because he has some walls, just like you, right? So step number 3, you have to have the observational skills and intelligence/wisdom to be able to see the results of your testing, right? So you could be like watching and seeing how he reacts to different things, and how he, how does he treat the waiter? How does he treat me? When I say this, how does he respond to that? When I dig deeper into his family history or relationship history, how does he respond to that, etc.? All these things, right? That could reveal the truth beneath how he's behaving, either consistently lining up with how he's behaving, or show a different color than the one that he's currently flashing at you, for better or worse. But to be able to do that, you have to be a good judge of character. You have to have some level of observational skills and wisdom to be able to recognize what you're seeing. Because you can see things and explain all the details of what you're seeing, but you can't put them together because you don't know what to look for. You have a lack of education. That's a large part of what I'm going to be helping you with. Bumping up your value and then teaching your ability to see the results, right? Then the next part, this is where it gets hard, okay? These next two things kind of are two threads of the same longer thread. You're going to need the discipline to not continue seeing him, to not give in when you see the results of your observations and see that he is either not what you want. That's the easier one to give up unless you're desperate, right? And the other one, if he's not a commitment kind of guy, right? So that's the more difficult one. He's what you want, but he's not going to commit. So you have to have the discipline to resist in both cases. And that's very hard to do. Because we all want that security and we want that satisfaction of having someone who loves us, but this is not a channel on settling, okay? This is a channel that is designed to get you the best that you are willing to work for. I'm not even going to say the best you can get, the best you're willing to work for, okay? Then the next part can be just as difficult, or maybe even more difficult. You're going to have the willingness to trust him when your tests and observations give you green lights. Are you going to be able to trust him? Because at some point you're going to have to let him hit. you're going to have to give him the pussy, okay? Because I'm going to be teaching a little bit different of a strategy to you girls, okay? And this is going to be, I think, unique in my advice, or unique among women's dating advice, is that if you, this is going to be something. If you are making a guy commit to a relationship before having sex, he's probably not worth it. This is where it gets hard, honey. This is where it gets hard. It gets difficult. He's probably not the shit, okay? Because if he was, you would find it very difficult to resist him, and he probably wouldn't be waiting around for it. Here's the thing. This is the fucking nuclear bomb. Being a high-value guy, like in the like red pill idea, of like makes money, he's successful, he gets a lot of girls, this and that. That's not what I actually define as being high value. Those things can be indicators of value, but it is not that simple. Now, that is a totally different thing that is going to take a long time to go over. Hi, baby. I'm making a video. It's my wife. She just came home. I'm doing my first video for advice for girls. Yeah, we're going to see how it goes. So, I've gone for 46 minutes. I don't want to go say hi to my wife. But, yeah, that's a totally different topic. What actually makes a high-value man? Because you can have a guy who has all the fucking check marks, right? Successful, cool, yeah, gets good, you know, he's charming, etc. But if he's the kind of guy who's going to surround and wait for commitment, there's usually a catch that you're not seeing. He's probably fucking other girls in the meantime, which maybe you don't care, right? He's just really patient, knows how to play the game, and then who knows? He might actually rip the rug from under you once he gets what he wants. Or maybe he'll actually commit. So that strategy can work, right? But I'm here to teach you a strategy that is based on an understanding of the complexity of desire and sex and relationships and love and commitment and trust and everything I went over. So yeah, that's going to be the hardest pill to swallow. Now, I'm not saying you have to give it up on the first date or anything like that. I'm not saying you have to immediately give it up. What I'm saying is probably if a dude is already promising you the farm, you either found a really rare circumstance where the guy just knows what he wants, right? Or he's probably not the shit. So we have a long way to go and a lot to learn, but we're going to get there. So stay tuned for a lot more. I don't currently have any books or courses at the time of making this first video for girls, but if you're watching this years from down the road, who knows, and I've started to help a lot of women, and I've formulated a course and books, which I probably will at some point, right? Got to get paid for the work. You might find it in the description below. If not, maybe I'll make an Instagram separate for girls' advice, because that's the main way that I communicate with my viewers and customers, through my Instagram. I guess I could, I don't know. I thought about it, and actually keeping one Instagram for both of them, I think it would get complicated. Because guys would see the girl stuff come up and be like, oh, I don't want to watch this, and might actually be tempted to unsubscribe. And then the girls would see some of my stuff, and they'd be like, oh, okay, I don't really want to see this, and blah, blah, blah. But I'm going to talk to you just like I talk to the guys. I thought about it, and I'm like, should I kind of temper my personality? And I'm like, no, it's just boring. There's plenty of diplomatic, politically correct dudes out there being all like nice, touchy with you girls, but I think you need something a little bit more raw than that, right? This is going to be the raw dog advice, not the soft dick condom advice. Yeah, it's dirty. Yeah. So, yeah, I probably lost some of you girls along the way, but maybe some of you stuck around and you're ready for some real shit. So we will get to it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Typical YouTube bullshit. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell. Usually what I tell guys at the end of my videos is, hey, go fuck yourself and I love you. Should I do the same for girls? Well, hey, I gotta stick with my promise. So go fuck yourself, honey. But I love you, and I wish you all the best and all the happiness in the world. And may everything you want come true. And I'll see you very soon. Hector Castillo,